Generally, people ask themselves, what is mirroring? And it could be many ways of addressing this. I don't want to get into the scientific part of it because I'm sure there are tons of videos and research available on this in terms of where it comes from. Very briefly, this is a concept that has developed out of the psychodynamic, psychoanalytical type of branch of psychology and therapy. And very, briefly said, it is the concept that between two people, and usually we refer to a parent-child because we want to go to the root development and time of where mirroring develops, which is basically that interaction of a parental figure and a child from birth moving forward. And that concept of this interaction, this positive, validating, I would say, very supportive type of interaction that occurs between a parent and a child, that is necessary for healthy development of the child's personality, of their child's sense of self and self-concept, the self-esteem, self-confidence, and literally their neurobiology, their ability to develop in a healthy and if most effective functional way in their childhood and as a result as a person and in the society. Now, specifically what people refer to in terms of understanding what actual mirroring looks like, they refer to those components of behavior, such as a child being attended to by the parent, right? So many examples come to mind, such as eye contact, gaze, looking, paying attention, almost imitating, if you will, to a certain extent what the child is experiencing and doing. For instance, a child could be smiling, and if the parent can also imitate that or reflect on that, or that's called more or less an emotional reflection, including that mirroring, and that's where the mirroring concept comes from. Literally, like a mirror, the parent smiles back, right, at the child. So it's that confirmation that, if you're smiling, if you're feeling happy, I am smiling, I'm feeling happy too, in terms of helping the child almost like normalize that experience and feel good about it, feel this confirmation that my experience is okay. It's not something that is being frowned upon, it's being rejected, it's being threatened. And it could be also, it's not necessarily about positive only type of behaviors. It could also be a little bit of a, if you will, proverbial negative feelings. But I wouldn't call it really negative. I would say maybe more painful versus joyful feelings, such as, let's say if the child is crying, that's not necessarily negative, right? It's just crying. Crying is an emotional reaction, tears drop, and there is a little bit tense experience, and there's pain associated with that many times, right? So what if the child is in pain? What if the child is frustrated and agitated, and certainly their body is expressing that, symptomatically through crying? So if that experience of, reacting to a painful experience, event is leading to a child's self-expression through crying, then the question is, do the parental figures mirror that, like validate that, deliver confirmation and normalcy through, for instance, their care, maybe even also shedding a tear, maybe even paying more attention to what is happening and affirming to the child that they're there for them and that this experience is, again, okay, it's normal in terms of existentially, if you will, or phenomenologically, meaning that these emotions happen. There's a reason for that. Now, certainly nobody wants to remain in pain. The ultimate goal would be to help the child overcome that rather than, let's say, reinforce just continual crying or continuation of that painful experience. That's not really the goal, right? So if you think about mirroring, it's that presence, attunement, attention, validation, confirmation, all aligned to give all the childhood experiences or infant experiences that they're going through a sense of normalcy and reality and confirmation, so that the child feels ultimately safe and secure and protected and good and normal about themselves. And that experience then ultimately leads to the acceptance of these experiential moments, and coming to terms with them and learning how to deal with them and incorporating them in a healthy way in their growth and developmental growth, in terms of the self-esteem, self-confidence, self-reliance, and then take that to the next level of more or less social interactions with other people. That was a brief explanation of importance of mirroring and why it is necessary. Also, what I would like to briefly add is what happens if we don't deliver that. So if parental figures are invalidating, kind of rejecting, kind of almost like protesting or rebelling, or distancing themselves from the the child's experience or the infant's experience, what happens is a lack of attunement, lack of connection, lack of validation and confirmation. Therefore, let's say an infant's inner experience that is being channeled and translated through more or less their verbal, nonverbal, facial, and whatnot external expression, as a result of not being validated and confirmed, as a result of even being maybe rejected and invalidated and dismissed, turns into what we call a disavowed experience. So it turns into a self-state, a mind set, if you will, even a schema, if you will, kind of a neurobiological experiential pattern to some extent and script that is retained in the child's brain. It cannot be forgotten because it did occur, and then that lack of validation turns into a little bit of a painful experience internally, and almost like this self-rejection of that self-state, self-rejection of that part of ourselves, because we don't get that validation and confirmation and support from outside. We may interpret, and that's the amazing part, that this early stage of the brain development of an infant that cannot even probably speak or utter words, but can be so amazingly powerful in recognizing these interactions and interpreting them in a certain way. Ultimately, due to that interpretation, the child kind of recognizes almost like a demand and a command that is necessary for the child to contain this self-experience differently and kind of compartmentalize it, like put it aside, because it's not approved by outside, it's not welcomed by outside people. And so what happens is that is an experience that is then compartmentalized as perhaps bad, unwanted, unnecessary, what we call disavowed, that doesn't belong to me, shouldn't be part of me. And then it really takes its own trajectory into all kinds of problematic, I would say, experiences in the future. One of them being what we know from Carl Jung's research in terms of this being more or less labeled a shadow part of ourselves, and an unwanted part of ourselves that we may carry with us for the rest of our lives and really not know how it is impacting our self-esteem, and literally lead to lack of self-esteem, lack of self-confidence, lack of self-adequacy, and trouble us for the rest of our lives and impact our growth, our development, our success, our relationships with other people. I hope you found this video useful. Thank you for watching. Make sure you subscribe for more videos and click the bell for notifications, and make sure you watch another video. Thank you.